Welcome, Steve.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, my name's Steve Boyle. I'm the managing director of a company called Motion Data. And Motion Data also has a sister company, Driver Assist Me. And Driver Assist Me is a driver um, training company for assistance, driver assistance. I've been working in the vehicle test industry for about 18 years now, mostly in that time in the development of ADAS technologies. And for those that don't understand what ADAS technologies are, it's advanced driver assistance systems, which can categorize in things, which will be more about this with the presentation later, that assist the driver in their everyday driving tasks using technology to aid them. And so I started working with Volvo, as the company I worked with many years ago, used to do inertial navigation systems with GPS. We partnered with Volvo to develop a validation system of this technology, how we can validate their sensors and how we can test their sensors, which turned out to be the Euro NCAP standard for testing this type of technology. And all manufacturers around the world now use this technology to develop and test their ADAS systems. So I've had a lot of experience in this testing. The company Motion Data manufactures objects for detection of this type of testing and various different other aids that manufacturers need on their test tracks. So sprung out of that, Driver Assist became a way to introducing the technology to more people to understand it and get the benefits of it and understand the limitations as well. So Driver Assist is a driver training school for the technology itself and how that technology works and how you can get the benefits out of it. Because it's getting more and more common on cars that you can buy every day. And hopefully next year, when the second section of the global safety regulations devised by the UN kicks in, nearly all new cars will have some form of driver assistance technology fitted as standard, as that is part of the UN regulations. The only thing at the moment is the UK haven't signed up to these global safety regulations because of we left the EU. The EU automatically signed up as a whole, but we have to sign up individually. So currently the UK is not signed up to accept all these new latest safety regulations into the automotive industry. It's not just cars, it's also trucks and buses as well, and various other aspects of automotive engineering. And the PACS, the Parliamentary Advisory Committee, tomorrow is launching a campaign to try, because the first phase kicked in last year, the second phase kicks in next year, so it's 1 year between the two, about trying to get the government again to sign up to this safety regulation and to introduce these safety technologies onto cars. It's not all active, some of it's passive as well, but it is a new set of safety regulations. So today I'm going to be talking a bit more about these technologies, what they are, how they work, a bit about the basics of it, and show some videos, and then talk about the benefits of using it and some of the limitations to it. And of course, if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask as we go along, but also there'll be time at the end as well.
So, all right, Steve, if I just pop that little poll up just at the start there.
Sure.
I'll just pop the poll up on the screen, folks, for you just to respond to, just out of interest to see which of the following ADAS you might be familiar with. We love acronyms, don't we? So hopefully that's appearing on your screens there. So have a little click.
If you don't know what the acronyms are, that's lane departure warning system, auto emergency braking, and active cruise control or adaptive cruise control.
You've passed, Steve. So we'll see how many of you are familiar with these, just out of interest. I'm sure they're all going to get a mention today. Just the votes are still coming in. That's it. All right. So yeah, we got quite a high 81% on AEB, automatic emergency braking and adaptive cruise control, and 67% on the lane departure warning system. Different manufacturers call it different things, I think, don't they? But yeah, good. All right, I thought that was just a good little gauge the audience there. Thank you for doing that. Back to you there, Steve. Then.
So a follow-up question would be that how many people actually use or experience the technology?
Yes. Yes.
Is that because it's a difference between being aware of it, but as you said, there's a lot of people say, "Oh, I never use that stuff in my car. I turn it off all the time, or I don't use it." So too complicated for me. I just
Yeah.
like to
Yeah.
use it.
We might ask that maybe at the end. How
Yeah.
many people do actually use this or incorporate in their lessons or whatever?
Well, there is a bit that we can talk about that as part of the lessons. What some of the technology is useful um, in driving world. Some of the technology you won't use in the driving world, and some of the technology you might have to use in the driving world when you're doing this instruction. But you see, it kicks in. Some switch on, some switch off, some are activated, some are not activated. So we'll carry on with that. So if we'll move on to the presentation now. Stop sharing results in the middle of my screen.
Let's close that down.
Yeah, so that was just three of the different types of ADAS. There's many of them. There's obviously the adaptive cruise control, which we talked about, or active cruise control. Lane departure warning, and an advance on lane departure warning is lane keeping systems, where the vehicle actually keeps you within the lane rather than warns you if you're departing the lane. There's BLISS, blind spot information system, which tells you if there's objects in your blind spots. And that is evolving quite rapidly at the moment in the HGVs and buses, or cyclists coming down the side, or turning left. So a lot of the trucks and buses now have BLISS systems all the way down the sides of the buses. They have more blind spots for a truck and a bus than they do in a car. Roadside recognition, where the car tells you on the dashboard what the speed limits are, whether there's any children crossing signs or out of limit signs. ISA, intelligent speed assist. This is another one that is due to come in with the global safety regulations next year, provided we sign up to the global safety regulations, the UNECE. Intelligent speed assist is an advance of the active cruise control, where it will recognise the speed limits to slow you down rather than just the predetermined speed that you entered when you started it. So, which is useful for things like on the motorways, you see 50 mile an hour while the roadworks, it will then slow you down to 50, 50 through the roadworks, and when you leave the roadworks again, it will speed you back up to speed. Well, current ACC will just keep you going at the preset speed of your active cruise control. Stop and go and queue assist. This is another, I don't think it's an underrated part of ADAS. It works with the active cruise control and the intelligent speed assist, where your car will actually bring you to a standstill and move it and take you off again if you've been within a certain period of time. So if you're stuck in the traffic on the M4, the M5, or any motorways, or even just going into your local town, it will go and move with the traffic. So you're less likely to get frustrated and stuck in traffic, and also less likely to hit the car in front when you have that queue assist. Active headlights is another new one. A lot of cars now have active headlights which turn and bend and dip and change around with depending on what the road situation is, if the car's coming towards you. And there's a lot of work in that field. There's a lot of work of LEDs going to be in lights, where they'll be able to turn certain LEDs off it, actually point towards that cyclist over there and leave the rest of them on so you can see well, but the cyclist won't get blinded. And as he moves towards you, he'll turn different LEDs off and put the old LEDs back on behind it. There's a lot of work in that field, like active headlights. And then there's a less common one is park assist, so allowing people to park, so it's reversing, stopping, hitting poles behind you, so make the car auto park as well, or functions of parking. There'll be cameras, it's advanced on cameras that actually turn the steering wheel for you, or prevent you from hitting the car behind, or prevent you from hitting a pole which is stood in the car park from behind. Because I don't know whether you've all noticed as well as I do that Some car parks are designed to be anti-car, which is like to put a lot of poles and trees and lampposts in the middle of car parking spaces so you hit it. I think they're in cahoots with insurance companies or the local repair company. And then there's active safety, which is full collision warning and auto emergency braking, which prevent accidents from actually happening. But that list is getting bigger now. There's actually steering assist as well, where the cars will steer to avoid an accident to a certain if there's a head-on, which really add that one towards it. Some of the technology used for all this varies among manufacturers and it varies along the types of vehicles. There's camera technology, which looks ahead. So if you see lot of new cars now have a little triangle in the windscreen by the rear view mirror looking forward. Some will have two of those little triangles looking forward, and that's a stereo camera. And the stereo camera is a much better option because obviously, just like you and I, we have two eyes. You can judge distance as well as just the object. The cameras are very important because they do see objects much better than other technologies. But they do have the issues with sun, with light, and also with rain, fog, and various things like that. So other technologies you use to help that is radars and lidars. So you have a radar which sends a signal up to 200 meters ahead of the vehicle, looking for objects in its path and making sure those objects are not going to be hit by the vehicle. And lidars, which is light version of the same thing. So it sends out beams of light and then reflected back off the object in front. And then you can move on to making a combination of all those types of sensors. So you can have a camera and radar, cameras and lidars, and they all have their advantages and disadvantages. And so that's why they often work together. And ideally, you have probably all three on the vehicles to get the best performance. And now more and more vehicles get multiple radars and multiple cameras on them. Some of the Teslas, some of the advanced Volvos and cars have 7 or 8, if not 13 sensors on them looking in different directions. So on your blind spot, there'll be 2 radars at the back looking sideways. And also looking 2 radars at the front looking sideways for cross traffic, coming from the front, and cross traffic coming from the rear. There's cameras and radars looking back for objects that are going to hit you from behind. So more and more are coming. But obviously, as a standard, that becomes more expensive for a vehicle manufacturer to put those on. So it's only on premium vehicles to get multiple cameras at the moment that the more non-premium vehicles are getting this just the standard camera radar or camera lidar radar.
I just interject there briefly, Steve. There's a one of our listeners there was just asking if it's possible just to speak a little bit slower. I know you identified
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
little
sure.
bit muffled. It's just sort of picking up a little bit of a ring on the end, I think. And then I had a couple of questions as well. I don't know if it might be okay to interject with those at this point. Ian was asking, will intelligent speed assist ever be remote accessible to a specific car level by law enforcement agencies? Will we see the end of car chases, for example?
Well, I think the technology will always be there to do that, but it's that intrusion into other people's life and data protection that allows it to, because that's always the ability. There's probably the ability to do it now, but the laws of data protection and interfere with other people's, because if the police can do it, then some other person's going to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so having that technology available is always open to nefarious people to do nefarious things with it.
Quite a minefield it could be, couldn't it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was the question. We got a thumbs up for that. Thanks.
And Sally, you are right that it is as good as the infrastructure. At an event in a few weeks' time, we're doing with driver assistance tech. It's about that showing the highways people. It's time that we've got to a position that ISA and these technologies are now seeing infrastructure, but they're integrated with infrastructure. Previously to ISA, Intelligent Speed Assist, it was all about the car in front. So it didn't really need to react with the outside world. It was about the car in front. possibly the white lines and lane departure and lane keeping, but mostly about the objects in front of it, which were not part of the infrastructure. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. It was a pedestrian crossing or a car. The attention speed assist is about recognizing the speed limits and then slowing down to the speed limits. Because there's been no, like with electric cars, there's been no regulation to make sure all the speed limits have to conform to a standard and all the cars have to conform to a standard, then we can change them accordingly. And the way the ISA works is two methods. There's using GPS mapping and also road signs. And the council where I am here in West Oxfordshire have decided to implement a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is fine, but they didn't do it very well because they've got still 30s written on the ground and 20s written on
Yes,
here.
hear that from time to time.
And they've got parallel roads with 20s and 30s. The technology is struggling to see between which one's which. And they haven't incorporated any GPS mapping of this area now for the new 20-mile-an-hour limits. So every car starts up, thinks it's in a 30 till it sees a sign that says 20. So it's all about trying to get the highways, and there's an event in a few weeks' time as part of that, trying to get the highways infrastructure and the whole of the country, in effect, on one, I hate this phrase, singing from the same hymn sheet type of thing. That the infrastructure of the highways and the roads and the networks starting to match the technology of the cars so they work better together. That's part of a safe system approach a charity called Road Safe is trying to do, that all these things work better together than they do on their own parts. So there's the implemented speed limits by the councils and the government. Then there's the technology for sticking to speed limits. The most might have an improvement of 5–10%. But put them together, you might get an improvement of 30% if they all work well together. Because it is, in my town, it is frustrating for me when my car doesn't recognise half the speed limits. The signs are saying because of the technology of the car is not the same as what the technology of the speed limits is. So there is that approach. And this is part of what driver assistance is trying to do as well, is try to expand that knowledge so we can all try to understand it. Because the local town council around here didn't even know that attention speed assists existed, but they've implemented a bad system for this. But yes, Sally, there is an issue with recognising the speed accurately because there is not enough knowledge about it and not enough infrastructure to map it. And that's going to be the same as we move further forward. This is the same reason why the government hasn't signed the document for the global safety regulations yet. Part of that was, I think it was the Daily Mail had a campaign, so the Europeans are trying to enforce speed limits on our cars. So it was, as opposed to it being a UN global safety regulation, rather than the Europeans trying to enforce speed limiters on our cars. But at least said about that, the better, from my point of view.
Yeah.
We will introduce that technology, and if the government doesn't know it, Grand Chaps, we've had that many transport ministers over the last few months, the last few years. The Grand Chaps was out shouting about AB, and he went to a stop the crash demonstration and drove it, and actually stood up and did a video about AB, how he's great, and then refused to sign the law that makes it standard on all cars. So it's that political side of it as well as the infrastructure side of it.
Just a couple more questions that are on that same topic there, Steve, that were from Seb. I'm getting lots of clients report that the ISA can pick up 20-mile-an-hour limits on side roads and then slams on the brakes on even if the road they're travelling with national speed limit 60 to 20 potentially.
But that's part of the issue with the GPS mapping, and also part of with the visuals. And as I said, the councils and the infrastructure don't know about the technology, so they're not thinking of that in mind.
Of course, sometimes signs get turned around.
They're making the map shorter on side roads. So if you have a side road coming onto this way, it stops about 100 yards away, so it doesn't overlap. Because the accuracies of GPS are not as good as people expect as well. Because people expect GPS accuracy to be very good. But you might only have 50, 60, 70 meter GPS accuracy, so it doesn't know whether you're in the 30 limit or the 60 limit. So it's again, that's people not understanding the technology of implemented these systems
Mm.
on the highways rather than
Yes, yes.
outside of it.
Sometimes they get turned around by either somehow the signs, don't they, turned slight angle and they're not actually
Yeah,
facing the right direction. And what will happen if you get caught speeding as a result of using speed assist? I think I could probably answer that one. Someone that does speed awareness courses, I don't think you would you would get let off for that. It's down to the driver to know the limit of the road and be expected to stick to it and not blame the technology. Would you agree with that, Steve?
yeah. So the ultimate, at the end of the day, it is down to the driver who's still in charge of the car.
Mm.
But they are trying to push towards level three the technology, and there's a Ford Blue Cruise of self-certified ability to drive no hands on the Blue Cruise on certain sections of the highway. So they have said when it's in that mode, they will be responsible for some of the failures, the insurance element of that. If it's proven to be a fault of theirs, because you now don't have to. You still be alert, but you don't have to be driving and take your hands off. So it's getting to that grey area when it's like to who's been responsible and who's not.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that that Blue Cruise system has only been self-certified. It's only been able to be self-certified because we didn't sign the UN safety regulations. Because part of those UN safety regulations that it's called ALKS, Automated Lane Keeping System. It has some regulations about ALKS in that UN. Um, and because we haven't signed it, we don't have to follow those regulations part. So Ford have managed to self-certify it because it doesn't quite meet the regulations in Europe that they do over here because we haven't signed the legislation.
Mm.
So
Right.
another reason why we should sign this legislation and should adopt road safety is
Yes.
to stop all this technology being not cowboys, but people trying to implement technologies isn't quite right
Mm.
and not good enough quite yet, and make people more understand it. So it does have its benefits, as we've seen. There's some limitations to it.
Yes. Yeah.
So if we just move on now,
Super.
so these are sort of the products that are used to test these type of cars. So we have like there could be motion data manufacturers these for the industry, so there's motorbikes, pedestrians, e-scooter riders, half cars, full cars, and they're used to detect in terms of the cars and the technology to drive at it, and so you can not damage the car and it can reset the target and not kill any real people or injure any real people or hurt anybody else in the process. And another reason why they are soft is because they're used to mitigate crashes as well as avoid. So if there's going to be a detection, the car automatically brakes. It might not be able to avoid the collision because of the speeds or the last minute, but it might be able to reduce that collision. So part of that is still tested. So that's why we use the soft vehicles as well. So this is a video of how it's an old video, so it's a lot better than this now. What happens when the camera sees? So you can see the white lines, see the yellow dots all like that. It sees the vehicles in front. It puts a square around them, and it sees what it needs to see. So it's a quick example of how it works. And they need to update this video. It's about 7 or 8 years old now. And this is one for pedestrians. It's been having trouble playing. It seems to freeze so often. Yeah, so there you go. As you can see there, it's put the objects around the pedestrians. If it pans through, you see more and more coming. So the advantage of this type of technology is it's looking all the time. Regardless of what, as a driver, we're doing in the car, we're never concentrating 100% of the time in front of us of what's going on. We're often looking to the right, looking at road signs, looking at our GPS, looking at even our passengers or talking to people in the back seat. But this is always 100% concentrating, looking forwards at the pedestrians crossing the road. So hopefully it will never be distracted and it will always be concentrating. So it should always give you that confidence there's something looking, even if you're not 100% of the time. And this next video is we talk about autonomous emergency braking. And as we said, there's sensors, LiDARs, and cameras. So the next section of this presentation is going to show more about this. We've got the ability now with the technology to see there's going to be an accident and hopefully prevent that accident. It's been proven to increase. I think Jaguar released some figures a few years ago that cars fitted with it were 38% in less accidents than the cars without fitted with it. A lot of them are just small rear end collisions or into a car. That was the first technology that they came up with, was car to car, car to a car. There's a lot of cars running the back of other cars. There's a lot more cars on the road, and most of these cars you see, which was another funny fact that buses hit more buses than they do cars, even as more cars are there, because most of their manoeuvres are around other buses and bus stops. So most bus accidents involve other buses rather than cars. Even though there's not many buses on the road, but so obviously it's like for like in its object. So the first thing that NCAP introduced was car-to-car detection, and so they drive at a rear end of a car, stationary car, running the back of where there'll be traffic lights, people braking, and you've all been close to either hitting it or probably possibly hit another car in front. And so that was the first technology that was introduced. And then they advanced that on to look at pedestrians, cyclists, and motorbikes. First evidence test was simple: drive past a target, stopped without any interference to the driver. So it was simple, what we call a city safe. So it only works up to about 30, 40 kilometers per hour. The most accidents are happening below 30 kilometers per hour in an urban environment. It was quite simple. It was just to stop it running into the vehicle in front. And so a lot of cars have that as standard. A Volkswagen Up, all fitted them as standard. They call it a city system. Volvo introduced that as a standard from 2013 on all cars, the basic city safety. And some others manufacturers have done that as well. It doesn't require a great mass amount of expensive technology to achieve that level, so it became a standard. To move it higher and have moving targets or moving objects requires longer vision, longer distances to look with the technology. So that became option extras on some cars, but now it's going to be standard as well. So this is a higher speed one. This is at 60 kilometers per hour. You can see that there's a warning inside as well, so it warns the driver it's going to happen, and it's happening. There's something's happening there. It gives you time for the driver to take charge. If he doesn't take charge, then it will break itself. And you see it in this bottom corner. Nobody can see my mouse on the screen. The bottom right hand corner, it stopped. Not very far away, but it stopped. That was at 60 kilometers per hour for a static, and which is one of the highest speeds for a static vehicle in front of it. So that's 60 kilometers per hour is about 40 miles per hour.
Right. We can see your mouse, by the way, Steve. We can see the mouse, by the way, but that helps point to anything. Yeah.
This is a pedestrian, so the pedestrian walks out in front, and the later test had cars and a child for different objects, and cars running from behind a child. These are one of the early ones. Oops, sorry. The pedestrian walks out in front of the car sees it, stops. The pedestrian falls over there, not because it was shocked that the Volvo stopped. It's because it has electromagnets on the board, it holds it up, and so stop it falling over. Those electromagnets are deactivated just before there, so if it does hit it, it moves out of the way and doesn't get so much damage. It tends sometimes to fall over when it stops, even though the car didn't hit it. In fact, there's another funny video. I was going to include that. There's a walking pedestrian as well now. There's a pedestrian does the same thing. It falls over, but when it's laying on the floor, it still tries to walk, and it looks like it's the final throes of
trying to escape.
I thought we won't put that one in. So this was the next advantage, moving up from car to car. We move up to car to pedestrian, and there's also a child pedestrian, and there's now two cars beside it. The car comes up, child runs out between the two cars, which is a common thing we see. And then it's advanced up to that to have a nighttime scenario, so test at night under lights as well. And then there's also a cyclist that comes across now, a bicyclist, and they're looking at introducing an e-scooter that comes across in front of them. So they're advancing the object's detection all the time.
Just a couple more questions there. But is it okay just interjecting with the question,
Yeah,
Steve?
sure.
I'll take them at the end. I don't mind. But and it's quite apt to what you were just sharing there, Seb. Again, does the AEB react efficiently to motorbikes in front? I'd heard of issues with motorbikes not being seen, especially with Teslas.
Well, we do have a motorbike. I think about the picture earlier. Motorbikes have been introduced this year into the NCAP scheme. This is the motorbike and rider that they use. It sits on a robotic platform that makes it drive along. So they're being detected from the rear. There is no official test on the motorbikes. It's one of those things they're introducing. They started off with a big list of objects, and they took out the biggest ones first, and the easiest ones to get rid of first, and then they're moving through those categories. The motorbikes has been introduced by NCAP in 2022, 2023 for objects there. But with ACC, they often do. Again, it's different technologies on different cars. Some manufacturers have taken this on board and tried to produce a good system. Some manufacturers have taken it on board and just produced one that passes their NCAP test to get their rating. The people like Volvo, Mercedes, and some of the Fiats as well, and some of the Subarus that have a very good system, have taken on board that and tried to make a really good system that stops for lots of things. Others have done the bare minimum to get an NCAP rating. If motorbikes aren't in the NCAP rating, they're not interested in motorbikes. So it is a thing that the manufacturers does vary across the manufacturers. That's part of not having the regulations. And part of this UN regulation coming next year will start to imply a certain amount of legislation that they have to do a certain thing rather than just get the minimum. Because there is no legislation for this technology yet. Another reason I think it's important that we do sign the legislation as a country to adopt this technology. People have said to me that they won't make technology on these cars that do on foreign cars. They won't make a difference. And my answer to that was that if you go stand at the production line at Sunderland, looking back up the Nissan line, coming towards you, cars with the steering wheel on the right, which is the left-hand drive cars, are for Europe. The cars with the steering wheel on the left are the European cars for UK. So there already is a difference, big difference between the cars for Europe and the cars for the UK. It's that round circle thing that we all hold on to. And it's on opposite sides of the cars. So it's quite easy to say, all the cars on this side have radars technology because they go to Europe and they have to have it by law. All the cars on this side don't have that because it saves us 500 quid. But we can still sell them at the same price. There's no legislation here. So because the cameras, the radars all cost money, especially when there's a chip shortage at the moment. We all know the chip shortage. These are quite chip intensive to put this technology on cars. So there has been instances. Ford produced a limited edition Ford Focus with supposed to be a lightweight racing version of the ST without any of this tech on it, just to try and keep selling cars that didn't have chips in them. And during lockdown, they sold a lot of Ford Transit and diverted all their business into Ford Transits because there was a big need for vans. Of course, vans didn't need any technology in them at the time. So they're less complicated and easier to make vans. So Ford Transits outsold Ford Fiestas for a while. On the cars because they diverted their business into that because they didn't have the chips, they didn't have the technology on it. So there is instances where they would not apply the technology if they could get away with it. Because everybody does everything for money these days.
Two more little thoughts on the screen there as well, Steve. Mine.
Off when turning right-hand corner.
Yeah.
Yes, there's again, it's down to the different manufacturers of the technology and how well they've tuned that technology. A lot of it is done by a radar system. It's the cheapest way to do it. Is to throw a radar on the front of it, go to Bosch or Continental, on the Japanese called Denso, and ask them to put this on your car. You take your model, give it to them. They say, yeah, okay, what do you want? Oh, we just want to pass a basic NCAP test. We put the radars on the front, do the basic technology on it, and give you it back. And it passes an NCAP test, but you have issues with certain part cars. A lot of the time, let's explain this to Kevin beforehand, the way the system looks is a radar or a camera or a LiDAR looking forward. And you have a parked car in front of you, it's looking at a point in time. And at the current point in time, you are going to drive towards that car and hit it if you don't, something doesn't happen. It's going to move out of the way, you're going to brake, you're going to stop, or you're going to turn around it. And so at the point in time it happens, is that right-hand corner, that car's parked there, you are going to hit that unless you do something. You know that you're going to turn right, and you do turn right around that corner, but the car doesn't at that point in time. So it's possibly just inconvenient that the distance between the car and the turning point is it's warning, it's gone past its point of, no, I'm going to have to do something about this, we're going to hit that car otherwise. But I think there's always going to be those situations for a while till they get the technology better and better and better. That you will just happen to fall into the parameters of the distance to the corner and the distance to reaction. Part of it you probably get away with is by lifting off the acceleration before you get there. It would know you're reacting to it. It shouldn't do it. But again, that's technology and infrastructure and understanding and learning and how the manufacturers can make it better.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Does it only work when it's expected? Yes. Not always only work. AB will work if it thinks the driver's not paying attention, or the driver's not in control. So if the driver has certain reactions, it kind of override the AB, or some interactions, it doesn't override the AB. And again, that all depends on timing as well, because obviously it's got a system. It says, I see an object in front, the time starts ticking down, I think it's a car, we're going to hit it. I'm going to warn the driver's nothing about it, we're going to hit this object, I'm going to start doing something. And then you interact, you might already be too late in the process to stop the interaction. Before that point, you could stop the interaction. So it might vary each time, because there's a process involved with calculations and the delays of that. And so if you're lifting off and you're still going to hit it, that's fine. But if you are actually braking, or it'll assume that you've taken control and it won't activate the AB because you have seen the car in front. But again, I said different circumstances, it will apply different methods because of time, distances, speed, different cars again, and different technologies. But we move on. We got past those videos. When we get to those videos, so we can follow over. This is a truck. So the trucks we did sign up for the legislation on trucks. So the last global safety regulations came out in 2016. We did sign up for that because we were part of the NCAP and part of the EU. So this is a video of a truck stuff. It's quite loud, this, but it might go to the volume. Very impressive. And so you can see this is what a lot of the highways agencies base their smart motorways on, that trucks had this technology fitted, so therefore they would be hitting the rear end of cars. But obviously the technology at the time wasn't as good as they expected it to be, or thought it was to be. And so there was still instances of cars hitting stranded vehicles on highways. It still is. But part of that is, as we carry on showing you later on, is that the technology, whilst it has a good benefit and does detect this, it also has its limitations. Those limitations are different vehicles. NCAP has introduced a certain level of it, but it hasn't taken it past. So if you have trailers or bicycles on your roof rack or an unusual vehicle, like a flatbed lorry or a pickup truck, sometimes they don't always detect as well because they haven't got that technology requirement in them. Not because they can't do it, it's because the requirement wasn't there. Some technologies are better than others, and some manufacturers again are better than others. So, but on trucks, it is a very powerful thing. And I think if we all know that a 40-ton truck doing 50 miles per hour, if that can avoid an accident in front of it, I think we all be very grateful if that was you sat in front of that truck activated that. So it isn't proved to be 100% perfect on trucks, but it has been known to save a lot of crashes. So while we're not going to say stop every vehicle crash, they are reducing it, but it is on the way to reducing more and more as the technology gets better and better, and more people understand it. And so the actual research technology is 38% improvement, but it's much better, starting to get higher than that now. And the reason that they had to come up with those figures is because they had cars with and without fitted. And so people were actively asking for it in the early days. So we can look at the compare that there's been 500 Jaguars put into the body shop because of the front end collisions, but none of them had AAB on them. So therefore, the AAB is good because we would have had maybe 2,000 Jaguars put into it. So that's how we came up with those figures. But as I said, we've got issues with the technology. As someone pointed out earlier, we have lots and lots of road signs in this country that are very confusing. This is a picture of somewhere in London, I think it was, of road signs. And same with the white lines. So we've got to start all understanding it. And there's a lot of challenges because you've got all those parked cars, you've got people parking white lines now, you've got councils putting cycle lanes here willy-nilly and boxes in the streets and things like that, which are all well and good when you support LTNs or don't support low traffic networks. The wooden box in the middle of the road doesn't always get seen by an auto emergency braking if you don't use that wooden box being there. But they could have put something on it that does make it seen, but they didn't understand the technology. And you could have less cluttered signage around to aid the roadside recognition to see things better. So it is good. I would always advocate having this technology fitted in the car if we could, but there is a lot more we can do. And our understanding of it as a whole, plus the infrastructure people, the highways, the networks, all that stuff, make it more suited. And again, the manufacturers move it towards as well. But you can imagine the manufacturers are trying to make this technology work in Japan, Sweden, North Africa, America, and the UK at the same time. And there's so many different signs and so many different things. Even in our own country, we have a highway code, but there's so many different signs locally in the different counties and different parishes and different things that are different again, which makes it more complicated. So when we have cameras and LiDARs and road signs and roadside recognition and ISA, we need good signage. So we're having dirty signs that are wonky or in bushes, or white lines that don't look white anymore or crumbled. We have a thing in this country of painting white lines along the join in the tarmac. The join in the tarmac disintegrates and takes the white lines away. And so you've got that technology. It's same with infrastructure on the highways. We have things like signage and all this sort that doesn't get seen so well. And this is something to be aware of with the driving school cars. That once you take a car, in this instance, we can see that LiDAR doesn't see any information of the signs because all the signs are the same reflectivity. So the arrow, the blue circle to a LiDAR is just the same, it's just all the same reflectivity. So we've got to start thinking of how our signs, how we interact with the technology from an infrastructure point of view. So we're not looking at the human vision anymore, we're looking at the human vision, radar vision, camera vision, and LiDAR vision, how we interact with the infrastructure. And so we have to change our thoughts. We've always been about advertising on cars or signs on cars or warnings on cars being for the human eyes. That doesn't necessarily will be the same in the future. So what's good for the human doesn't always good for the technology. So when we take this simple car, that's what the technology sees. It doesn't really see a make of car. It looks for things like the dark shadows underneath, the silhouette roughly of a car, two red lights either side. Generally, mean it's a car. All cars have two red lights somewhere along the line. They also have dark shadows and darker tires at the bottom, and the technology can see what that is. It doesn't know it's a VW, it doesn't know it's a Ford, it doesn't know what it is. It's a basic child draw an image of a car. It's a car. But when we start to add things like stripes on it, like the Chapter 8 stickers, or put them onto it, it now disguises some of those things because the red reflection disguises some of the lights. And if we add big things on top of it, say learn a driver or police or slow down, we're now changing the silhouette of that as well. So where we used to put in great big white signs on top with Bob's driving school on it and an L on it, that might be the thing that's causing you to be collided from the rear. Well, the car doesn't see it because it's not a silhouette. It recognises. So these are the things we have to think about in the future and how we move forward. There's some of the limitations of the technology. It's still at that kiddies identified it. It's a car because it's got wheels and windows, not that it's a Ferrari or it's a Porsche or it's this or a sports car or an SUV. It's that basic. If we take those basics away and make it harder for you to understand, it's harder for the technology to see. So that's towards the end of the presentation, but obviously we can still answer any questions we've got. Deep joy. It's a deep joy to not see
Not seeing the learner car, deep joy.
the learner cars. It's not a definite because some of the technologies have it. It's just those things where it's more about the police cars and the traffic officer vehicles. There's things like the traffic officer vehicles on the highways. They take a standard XC90 and they plaster it up with lots of high-vis reflective stickers on it. And there's a project I've been working with the Dutch government with for the last 4 or 5 years. That how this technology, I think it also has a knock-on effect from the human aspect of it as well. And through the technology, I've been raising concerns about there's too much light coming back and too much reflectivity. And people have this thing about making it bigger, brighter, and better because people are still crashing into roadways. Put more lights and more things. I think that's also confusing people as well as the technology. So I've been looking at this from a technology point of view, which gives you the human aspect of it as well. That if we are disguising our vehicles by putting all these reflectors on them and then shining a light on them at night, how does that look like a vehicle to a camera system? If you park it sideways on the road across 2 lanes to make it bigger, it just looks even less like a vehicle because you don't expect a vehicle to be parked sideways across the road. But we do all recognise 2 red lights in the distance as a car, but we don't always recognise flashing lights, blue lights, yellow lights with lots of reflectivity as a car, which is an object. And so this technology is not like good that it sees those objects and stops yet. It doesn't see it as a car, it's an object. It doesn't recognise that object, so it doesn't always stop. The reason why they work like that is because if you can imagine you're driving down the highway, you have a radar system or a camera system, and all these objects, you do 50 miles per hour, all these objects are coming at you at 50 miles per hour. Trees, bridges, signs, they're all coming at 50 miles per hour, coming at you. And you've got to identify them, see them, work out whether they're in the path, not in the path, and discount them or count them in, and you're going to hit it. So there's not a lot of time when all these objects are flying at you. And you get reflections, you get shadows, you get sun shining off windows, you get shadows under bridges, the radar bounces off a bridge, bounces off a roadside, so it gets a lot of spurious, incorrect readings as well from the infrastructure where the technology bounces or reflects off other things. So it's very hard to identify. You could be driving a car in the sun under it, next to an overpass, and that's black, but the other 2 lanes are quite well lit because the sun's stopping the overpass, stopping that lane being lit up. And you could be in a black car and you can't see that, or a dirty car, you can't see the lights. So there's a lot of issues to try and get that technology to see those things. You and I are better at that. Obviously, we've been tuned over years to see those things, but technology is not that advanced. So it's harder for to see those objects. So they really like to be very confident of what they're seeing before they apply the brakes, rather than stopping for a shadow or reflection of a sign. If we go back to this image here, what we're quite good at on the highways is putting a big sign like that in the middle of the M1, expecting people to slow down, move over. But the technology, but also avoiding it when it's blue on the side of the road and saying Doncaster this way. So they've got to ignore them when they're there, but react to them when they're in front of you, and they look exactly the same. So it's about how we can get things like this infrastructure better to make the technology easier, and how we can make the technology better to recognise these situations. So it's still going to converge yet. So we will have problems like seeing parked cars on the side of the road and seeing um, not get the right speed signs and speed restrictions.
Hmm. So work in progress by the sound of it.
Yeah.
Lots of improvement currently, but still more to be done. There's a quick question that's in the Q&A box there, Steve. It says, is the EU better with interactive signage?
No, they're just as bad. Some countries are better. If you go to France, there's a lot of speed signs that are different, and Germany, because when it's ready, you do this speed, and when it's not ready, you do that speed, and that's hard for the technology to know because it's all in databases. It's about to get the databases right.
Hmm.
It's one of those things that you'd hope that as we do come, that the EU is probably better because the EU can make a better decision as a whole, and they can make like all signs. They're trying to make things more consistent across the EU, which make life easier. Because if signage is the same across the world, then it's easier for the technology rather than lots of different signs.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing I said I would cover, and I'm going to cover quickly, is about the driving instructors. The technology. We go back to this list. If you have a car with technology on and you're teaching people, things like active cruise control, you probably would never use because you have to activate active cruise control. But things like AEB and forward collision warning are mostly switched on every time you start the engine. So as a driver with a student beside you, you might come across that if the car in front of you suddenly brakes. So if the student might ask, what is that noise when a car braked in front of them, or someone ran out in front of them, or the car was still left, it could activate that forward collision warning. And they would want to know what that is. Of course, hopefully by then they've activated the brakes and not. But also Bliss would be a system that is normally on all the time. The Bliss was like the wing mirrors light up or light to the side. It's just something you can come across all the time. As a cyclist comes along beside you, if the cyclist car moves about, it might also beep as well. So those things you would occur in the 30-mile-an-hour limit. Things like lane departure warning, lane keeping system, you have to be going more than 40 miles per hour for them to activate. So you probably won't get that in most driving situations, unless you're on ring roads on higher speeds. Same with the stop and go, queue assist. But the roadside recognition would be there as well, because that would come on the dashboards all the time. It would be flashing on dashboards. So regardless of what speed you're, who's driving the car, those technologies will be there all the time and may interfere with your lesson, or not interfere with your lesson, or a student will be wanting to know what that is. The emergency brake assist is another interesting one as well, because there's studies show that people don't brake hard enough in emergency brake. They might do it in your lesson when you tap the windscreen. Do you still do that way? Lessons.
A little bit of emergency stop practice.
Yeah, but people don't brake hard enough. Studies in insurance companies show it's only about 40% of braking capacity. So a lot of technology now has the car will get that panic brake, especially if it's had a forward collision warning first. They apply the full brakes. I'm just going to shut my windows there. my office is on a flight path that RAF Bras not, so every now and then we get airplanes trying to land on the roof.
Right. Oh, thank you.
The That emergency brake assist will give you full braking, even though you only apply the brake at 40%.
Mm.
And that's something that's inbuilt in a lot of cars now that may affect your lessons when they do braking. They might say, "Well, that was a really good brake." It wasn't me; it was actually the car. But,
Mhm.
so something to be aware of as well. What would happen once these systems in operation and a person would just disrupt traffic by deliberately walking through? Well, I think we've got that now anyway with the stop oil protesters. Hopefully, you won't run a stop oil protester over. There's
Yeah.
always going to be that, but if someone was going to run in front of you just to stop you, you'd want it to stop, would you? Because you say, he was only joking. I taught him. I taught him a lesson. I ran him over. That's not going to be stand up in court anyway, is it? So, I think if someone's stupid enough to run in front of you to try and make your car stop,
Mm. Mm.
you probably want to stop them. You're not going to teach them a lesson by running them over.
And there was a question just above that. Did you see that one, Steve? Why does the technology still have the problem not seeing speed signs painted on the floor, but are able to pick up the speed signs on the sign posts?
Yeah, that is to do with the angle of the cameras and the technology. And again, there's not many places in the world that use that type of way of writing on the floor. And so
Right.
obviously the manufacturers have gone for the most common one, which is signs everywhere. Everywhere uses signs. Not many countries use painted floor signs. It's harder to see it, and it changes because of the weather. If it's a wet road, it's harder for the technology to see. And it's not consistent either. I don't think we have it consistent over here because you can have a car driving across the front of it when you see it. So,
Mm.
suppose should we use those signs or not? Arguments. There's a
Yeah.
car in front. There's a car in front. Just be driving over that sign when you're looking.
Mm. It was just,
Again, it's just down to the manufacturers putting that extra effort into how well their systems perform. Because there's same with everything. If you make a standard, people make a system to that standard. Some people will go beyond because they want to make it better. Some will just go to the standard. That's why
yes,
some standards are not always good.
it's going to take time, isn't it? I think for there to be that
Yeah,
consistency across the board when everyone's sort of singing from the same hymn sheet, as it were.
yeah,
I just had a quick random question, actually. Um, when these emergency brakes do kick in, Steve, do the actual brake lights come on at the back?
yeah,
So
yeah.
following vehicles know that the vehicle is braking.
Yeah, brake lights always come on with a brake, and a lot of the times the hazard warn lights come on now when emergency braking.
Oh yes, if it's a certain pressure of braking, yeah, like the
Yeah,
ADS kicks in, yeah, yeah.
yeah. And
There's a
the hazard warn lights or the brake lights flash. Although
yeah.
some manufacturers have changed that now. They changed it to the brake lights flashing,
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
which
To,
because I saw it the other day, and I thought, "What's that?" And I spent more time looking, wondering why the brake lights were flashing, and realising the car in front had stopped
mm,
because that's not a standard either, is it? So, this again, this is people taking what they think. Oh, that's a good idea. Let's make it flash. This is more visual. But it's outside the norm.
yes. I guess that's the idea to grab, but if people don't know, that's the thing, isn't it? But it's
Yeah,
obviously,
if you know, you go, "Why is that brake light flashing? Is it? Is it me or is it not?"
yes, yeah, yeah. Am I seeing things?
Yeah, as opposed to, "Oh, there's a car in front of the brake lights on the better stop."
Yeah, it's meant to denote, I think, heavier braking than normal, isn't it? To give you more of a warning. But have you finished with the slideshow now, Steve? I don't know if you
Yes,
want,
yeah.
if you have, you just unshare it. Maybe that will just change the well, be a little bit bigger on the screen. That's it. Just maybe to answer these closing questions, if that's all right. I mean, you can see them, I think, can't you? There was one from Ian about the emergency vehicles. Do you want me to read them out, or do you want to have a look? Mhm.
It's the same way many race vehicles now display at least one steady blue light to mitigate debates as to whether the vehicles has blues on the tire.
Is there not some way to have a laser reflector which had a signature the system can rely on? Yachts
Yeah,
apparently have radar reflectors.
yeah. We've manufactured a radar reflector that aids detection based on something we put with target. So there's technology and there's companies trying to push this that we can have a signature aircraft that when it just flew over on the radars they have what they call a squawk. It's an identifier. And so there's a startup in the UK that's trying to make a small identifier for vehicles, pedestrians, that the radar will interpret that and see what it is. And so when the radar sees that, it'll get a message back saying, "I'm a cyclist, I'm a pedestrian, I'm a sign, ignore me."
Wow.
So there is that push in there as well.
Yeah.
And the same with the lidar world, that you can have. I name them a big, that you can have that reflector. It will help you focus what you do need to see, what you don't need to see, to try and try to bring the infrastructure up to the technology as well as the technology can bring the infrastructure.
Right.
And yes, Sally is the same tech that driverless cars use, except they use a lot more of it. It has the same problems, the same issues, just as much. Um, the driverless cars, that's a whole new ballgame. But yeah, it's just that all these things add up to a driverless car. So these are individual components of a driverless car. With a driverless car, you have to have a lot more cameras as well to look all the way around. It's the same technology, the same electronics, the same sensors, but there's more of them. I don't think we're going to be, well, it'll be a long way off driverless cars yet,
Yeah.
despite what Elon Musk and his Teslas are doing.
Mm.
There will be sanitized areas where they will work, and there will be more of them on the road, but it's very hard to do it. They work. I mean, some of the Teslas now are driving on full self-drive mode in the USA, but the USA has a lot of traffic lights and intersections and stops. But it's quite simple to just react to like stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. It's easy to make an algorithm do that, but it's a lot harder to if people are run lights or don't have crossroads and we have roundabouts. They don't really have many roundabouts, and it's harder to interpret what someone's going to do at a roundabout than it is to see a red light means stop and a green light means go. So there is limitations, and that's why it works in America better in some places. And the weather is fairly consistent. You see, places it does work tend to be Chicago, not Chicago, because Chicago's windy and wet and rainy and lots of people walking around on New York, but it does work out in the sunny climes in California where there's a lot more space. The weather's fairly consistent, and it's easy for them to see because they have big wide roads, big wide lawns. And
Yeah.
not many people walk so much in downtown America as well as they do over here.
Absolutely. Very interesting. We're getting some good feedback there. So thank you for your comments on there. I think there was just one other question, and then we'll start to perhaps draw it to a close from Linda, which is in the Q&A section. It says, could the emergency braking, I think we did touch on this, could the emergency braking activate the hazard lights briefly? So some cars do that already, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
And that would perhaps be good if that was more consistent. But
yeah, I think it's they have to have the brake lights come on. But when they do a full emergency stop, most cars activate the brake lights and the thing lights if they're sort of hard. A lot of it depends on the G-forces and at what speeds you do.
Brilliant. Thank you. I think we've gone through all the questions there that people have been sending in. So we appreciate that some of you may well have to get onto other commitments, lessons, and so on. Just to say that the session is recorded, if you didn't realise that already, and just to reassure you, reactions, questions, comments, and other things are not included in the recording. They're separated. So if you want to catch up on this, listen again, or watch for the first time, tell other colleagues that it will be available. It's on our DIA Academy YouTube channel. So we'd really recommend you subscribe to that. So anytime we upload a new video, you'll get automatically notified. So do have a look at the DIA Academy YouTube channel, subscribe, and we'll be sending out information again for our next one, which will be in a month or so's time, Cycle Savvy, with Benjamin, who's from the Bikeability team there. So we'll be advertising that nearer the time. But thanks everyone for tuning in, and we hope you've got something of benefit from it this morning, and we wish you safe driving.